What the audience didn't know was that Red had kept another secret one even deeper. One he had never told on television. A secret that explained why he avoided alcohol, why he worked 7 days a week, and why the sound of laughter sometimes brought him to tears. Because the man who made the world laugh was quietly battling the one thing he couldn't joke away. Red leaned back in his chair, staring at the lights above the studio. The audience waited, sensing something was coming, something he had held inside for decades. My father, Red said quietly, died doing what he loved. But my greatest fear was that I would die the same way alone, backstage, while the world laughed out front. A soft gasp moved through the crowd. Red continued. People thought I was addicted to applause. But the truth is, I was running from silence. Silence reminded me of him. For years, Red had been hiding an ache that grew louder with every performance. Behind the painted smile, he carried the weight of losing a son, the collapse of a marriage, and the shattering realization that fame couldn't protect a man from heartbreak. My boy, Red whispered. Richard was 10 years old when he passed. I used to think losing a father I never met was the worst pain in life, until I lost a child I held in my arms. His voice broke. This wasn't the Red Skelton the world had seen for 40 years. This wasn't the clown, or the comedian, or the television legend. This was a father grieving his son. A son grieving a father he never met. A man realizing life had given him laughter, and taken everything else. Red took a deep breath, then looked into the camera as if speaking to a single person watching at home. If you have someone you love, tell them tonight, because you never know when the curtain is going to come down. The studio was silent. No punchline, no smile, no applause. Just the sound of a legacy unmasked. Red wiped a single tear from his eye. No jokes, no characters, no mask, just a man who had carried too much for too long. He looked out at the quiet studio and said softly, "People think laughter is something I give, but really, it's something I've been searching for my whole life." He paused, his hands trembling just slightly. "I created characters because each one was someone I lost. Freddie reminded me of my father, smiling, even when life hurt. And Clem was my son, innocent, happy, a light that went out too soon." The words hung in the air, heavy and fragile. "Everyone laughs at clowns," Red continued, "because they think hiding behind paint is easy. But the truth is, laughter is what we offer when we don't know how to cry." His voice cracked. "A clown's tears are invisible until he speaks." The room remained completely still. Not even a breath broke the silence. For the first time, Red wasn't performing. He wasn't entertaining. He was healing. He slipped the old photograph of his father back into his pocket and said, almost in a whisper, "If he could hear me now, I'd just tell him one thing. Your boy turned out okay." A soft smile touched his lips, real, unpainted, human. The audience slowly rose to their feet, but the applause wasn't thunderous. It was gentle, respectful, a moment of gratitude for a man who spent his entire life giving laughter to strangers, while carrying his own grief quietly. The curtain lowered. The lights dimmed. And Red Skelton walked off stage, lighter. Then he had entered a man, finally unburdened. Backstage, the world felt strangely quiet. The kind of quiet Red hadn't heard in years. A stagehand tried to speak, but stopped. No one wanted to break the moment that had just happened. Red sat down slowly on a wooden chair. The old kind with paint peeling off the edges. He looked at his hands that had juggled, painted, clapped, waved, and created laughter for millions. Now they simply rested in his lap, shaking ever so slightly. He whispered to himself, "Funny, all those years, I thought the laughter kept me alive. But maybe it was the pain that kept me honest." A young technician, barely 20 years old, approached him carefully. "Mr. Skelton, sir, I just wanted to say, that was the most powerful thing I've ever seen." Red looked up. His eyes weren't sad anymore, just tired, but peaceful. "Young man," he said, "promise me something. When life gives you joy, share it. And when it gives you sorrow," he paused, choosing his words, "don't bury it behind a smile like I did. Let someone in." The boy nodded, trying not to cry. Red stood and walked slowly down the dim hallway, past posters of his own younger self, bigger smile, brighter eyes, painted face. He stopped for a moment, staring at one of the old posters. "That man was so busy trying to make the world laugh," Red murmured. "He forgot to let himself live." He touched the poster gently, then let his hand fall. The exit door opened to the night air, cool still. A small breeze brushed against his face, as if the universe itself was telling him it was okay to breathe. Now, he looked up at the stars, so bright. Dan smiled. "Dad," he whispered to the sky, "I hope you saw me tonight." Then he stepped into the darkness, not as a clown, not as a legend, but as a man finally ready to rest. The night stretched out ahead of him, quiet and open, the kind of night that makes a man remember every road he has walked. Red slowly made his way toward the parking lot, each step feeling strangely lighter, as if the weight he had carried for decades had finally loosened its grip. An old security guard, someone who had worked the studio doors for years, stepped forward. "Good show tonight, Red." he said softly. Different, but good. Red nodded with a gentle smile. Sometimes, the truth is the best act we have left. The guard didn't fully understand what he meant, but he felt it. Everyone who saw Red that night felt that something had changed. A lifetime of laughter had finally made space for honesty. Red placed a hand on the guard's shoulder. You've watched me walk in and out of this place for a long time, but tonight felt like the first time I really left something behind. The guard watched as Red continued toward his old car, simple thing, worn but dependable. Red opened the door, but before getting in, he glanced back at the building. The bright red on-air sign above the entrance had finally gone dark. He stared at it for a long moment. That light's been on my whole life, he whispered. Maybe it's time to learn who I am when it's off. He slid into the driver's seat. No haju, no noisy, just the soft hum of the engine as he pulled out of the lot. The street was empty, the world still as if it too was catching its breath after witnessing the unmasking of a legend. At a red light, he caught his reflection in the car window, older, softer, more human than the man the world had memorized. You did your best, he said quietly to the reflection. And that's enough. The light turned green. Red pressed the gas gently, and the car moved forward, carrying him into the kind of night where a man can finally hear his own heart. Behind him, the studio disappeared into the distance. Ahead of him was something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. In October 2024, something appeared on Tubi that made 2 million people stop scrolling. For over 40 years, this footage had stayed hidden in studio vaults. The network once called it too emotional to broadcast, because Red Skelton had turned his final performance into something closer to a confession booth. He spoke directly into the camera as if it were his therapist. He revealed family tragedies, career lies, and personal failures. Viewers said it felt like reading someone's diary, and the biggest question was why they finally decided to release it. Red Skelton was born on July 18, 1913, in a cramped shack in Vincennes, Indiana, just 2 months after his father died from heart failure at age 30. His father had been a clown in the Hagenbeck-Wallace circus, but the joy he brought to others never reached his own home. After his death, Red's mother was left to raise 4 boys with nothing but grit. They lost their small store and survived only through neighbors' kindness. Red wore ragged clothes, went to bed hungry, and carried the weight of being the poorest kid in school. But he learned early that a well-timed laugh could soften anything. Humor became his shield. The hunger and hardship shaped his face, his timing, and his truth. At 7, he stood on street corners selling newspapers for 3 cents and cracked jokes to boost sales. By 10, he juggled jobs, delivering ice, carrying cigars, scrubbing laundry, walking miles for a few coins. He saw mothers pawn wedding rings to buy bread and kids go to school without shoes. His education was scattered, squeezed between shifts. But every minute spent making strangers laugh became a lasting lesson. He became known around town, not for grades but for the way he could make a man with a broken back laugh like a child. At 10, he ran away with a medicine show, joining Doc Lewis and spending 4 summers hawking fake Corrals for $10 a week. He slept in barns and wagons, sent every dollar home, and learned that even mistakes could be magic, like the night he slipped on stage and shattered a glass case, turning humiliation into laughter. He stayed with the show for 4 years, picking up pantomime, juggling, accents, and the skill of performing without applause. He grew up poor without bitterness, laughed without reason, and carried the ache of the father he never met. Stories were all he had, a man with grease paint and exhaustion who collapsed too soon from a life that took more than it gave. Red searched for him in every circus tent, every dressing room, mirror. He once said his comedy was just a way to bring back what was missing at home. At 15, with $1.35 in his pocket, he dropped out of school and hitchhiked to Chicago, chasing a vague burlesque promise. His mother didn't stop him. She knew some kids run towards something because they've already seen what it means to be left behind. Red took any gig he could through the Great Depression. At 16, he joined the Hagenbeck-Wallace circus, father's old circus, and breathed in the sawdust, sweat, and silence before a punchline. He joined a silent vaudeville act, the Merry Mutes, earning $5 a week and learning the power of silence. A glance, a stumble, a squint that could tell a lifetime of stories. By 1931, he and Bud Jones added words to their act, and Red's Clark Gable impressions brought in $75 a week, unheard of during the Depression. But when Bud cheated him, the act collapsed and Red was shattered. The heartbreak led him to Edna Stillwell, a sharp young usher who became his wife and writer at just 13. Together, they created Guzzler's Gin, a sketch that exploded in popularity and earned them $2,000 a week. But fame strained their marriage. In 1937, Red joined the Avalon Time radio show and created Clem K. Hopper, boosting ratings by 30%. By 1941, he had his own NBC show with 20 million listeners a week, filled with characters like Willie Lump Lump and the Mean Whittle Kid. But in 1943, during a live broadcast, he collapsed from exhaustion. Convinced he heard his father whisper, "Keep going." When he returned, his comedy carried a darker edge. The Mean Whittle Kid brought controversy, with FCC warnings over violence, but fans kept listening. By 1944, Red earned $10,000 a week, yet gambling nearly ruined him when he lost $50,000 in a single night. MGM signed him in 1940. His breakthrough came in 1941 with Dr. Kildre's Wedding Day, where he stole the film with a 2-day pantomime shoot. By 1943, he starred in Whistling in Brooklyn, earning modern-day blockbuster numbers and blending comedy with rare stop-motion effects borrowed from Disney technicians. But during the filming of Bathing Beauty in 1944, he learned his infant son Richard had leukemia. He kept performing, but crew members found him crying alone off. Richard died in 1958 at age 9, and Red said the grief changed everything. His work became softer, deeper. He turned to charity and children's hospitals. In 1948, the Fuller Brush Man sold 15 million tickets worldwide. But MGM pushed him relentlessly and ignored his grief. In 1951, Red fought the studio for creative control, was suspended, and made headlines as one of the first actors to challenge studio authority. Television revived him. The Red Skelton Show premiered September 30, 1951, to 30 million viewers, one of the first programs ever broadcast coast to coast. He won Emmys, created iconic characters like Freddy the Freeloader in 1952, and became a weekly ritual for American families. But in 1957, his marriage to Edna collapsed after her affair with his producer. He punched a hotel wall, broke his hand, missed episodes, and suffered a public unraveling. Worse came in 1958 when Richard's leukemia diagnosis surfaced and the boy died just before his 10th birthday. Red stopped talking and once attempted suicide in 1961. His grief turned into purpose. He created the Red Skelton Learning Center for Children in 1963. New characters and peak ratings followed up to 50 million weekly viewers by 1965. But in 1969, CBS canceled his show to chase youth culture. Red moved to NBC for one final season, ending his 20-year run on May 19, 1971. In 1973, hit by a $1.2 million IRS bill, he sold his Palm Springs estate and performed in casinos to pay debts. In 1976, NBC let him stage a small comeback with Funny Faces specials, and he returned to painting after his wife Georgia died the same year. His art became therapy and later a massive success, over 500 oil portraits. Galleries packed, paintings selling for thousands. But his health faltered. In 1981, he collapsed backstage in Las Vegas from drinking. That same year, he filmed Freddy the Freeloader's Christmas Dinner with Vincent Price, a quiet, heartfelt special watched by 5 million people. In 1982, he performed silent comedy with Marcel Marceau, even as vandals destroyed his son's grave. He didn't show the pain on stage. In 1983, he revealed he had served in Europe during World War II for 18 months, performing in blackouts and bomb shelters. That same year, he performed for Queen Elizabeth II at Royal Albert Hall for his 70th birthday. His farewell specials continued through the 1980s. Meanwhile, his life filled with lost, divorce, illness, the death of his wife Georgia, and a 1986 car crash that shattered his body in 12 places. He recovered, but slowly faded from public life. In 1990, doctors diagnosed him with COPD from decades of smoking. He quit instantly. In his final years, he painted obsessively over 50,000 pieces and donated money to children's hospitals. He died September 17, 1997, but he wasn't forgotten. In 1986, Lucille Ball presented him with the Governor's Award. More honors followed. In 1989, missing episodes resurfaced, and in 1990, a VHS set called The Lost Episodes introduced him to a new generation. In 2013, over 200 hours of unaired Kinescopes emerging, concluding sketches on racism and civil rights the networks once censored. They revealed a Red Skelton who wasn't just a clown but a quiet fighter. His art lived on too. By 2020, some Freddy the Freeloader paintings sold for nearly $1 million, and the Red Skelton Museum housed a $4 million gallery of his work. In 2024, the Paley Center revealed outtakes from his 1971 finale Raw Laughter, mistakes, emotional slips he never thought would air. And then came the most haunting release in October 2024. Tubi streamed Red Skelton, the Farewell Specials Uncensored Edition. Over 2 million watched in 1 week. These were long-lost scenes from 1981 to 82, including a 45-minute extended Freddy the Freeloader Christmas Dinner with Red crying, unscripted monologues, and talks about his father, Joe Skelton, who died 1 month before Red was born under a circus tent. For the first time, the world saw Red Skelton without the mask. For a few seconds, the studio fell silent. The man who spent his life making people laugh was suddenly fighting tears. Red reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, worn photograph of his father, a circus clown. Smiling beneath a painted face, "My mother told me," Red said softly, "that the night he died, the circus still went on. The show had to continue. Maybe that's why I never stopped performing, because laughter was the only inheritance he left me." The audience wasn't prepared for what came next. Red placed the photo on the desk and whispered, "People think a clown hides behind makeup, but in truth, the makeup lets you show who you really are." His hands shook, his voice cracked, and for the first time in his career, Red Skelton allowed the world to see the man behind the jokes. He wasn't the unstoppable comic anymore. He wasn't the beloved TV clown. He was just a son, still searching for the father he never met.